Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Notes to Self. My name is Melanie.
And I'm Corey.
We just tried to make a recording where Corey was in charge, but then he forgot how to be in charge. So he just kept handing it back to me. So we'll just go back.
We'll take two.
We'll just go back to what we were originally doing. If you don't know who we were both born and raised in a local polygamous cult here in Utah called the AUB, or the Apostolic United Brethren. I was raised with 4 mothers and 34 brothers and sisters.
And I was raised in the same cult. I was just raised in Pinesdale, Montana. It's a portion of the cult up north. My dad had 9 wives and 39 brothers and sisters. So all lived in the same compound up in Montana, same big house.
Nice. And I grew up down here in Salt Lake in the suburbs where we all lived separately for most of my life. So we want to remind everybody again to do your healing work if you haven't started it. It's an inside job that no one can do except for you. And when we watch these episodes and we see some of the trauma that's being created for some of these kids and some of the wives and what they're experiencing, it's just a good reminder to always go start your healing work if you can. Whatever modality works for you, go for it, because you deserve to be loved deeper, and your family deserves to be, the people that you love deserve to be loved deeper. And if you are human and you have a human body, then you have experienced trauma. So there is a million ways to go through the healing process. We strongly urge that you get started on that.
Yep.
So we have been doing a first time watch of Sister Wives. We have never watched Sister Wives before. We're doing the first time watch of it. We are on season 3, episode 8. This one is called Another Wife, where the Browns have some friends from Utah come down to Nevada and visit them, and we hear like what they have experienced. The couple that came down has never lived polygamy, and so they're just kind of going through the motions of figuring out if it's something that they want to do. They say they do.
Andy and Nicole.
Andy and Nicole. So I grew up with Andy, and he was one of my very best friends growing up. One of my really good friends here in Salt Lake.
And Nicole grew up in Pinesdale with around our family. She was right down the road. So I knew her whole family growing up too. So
yep. So we knew both of them growing up, and
I knew Andy as a young adult. So
yeah. Andy was had a lot of friends, or had a lot of family in Montana. Had a lot of family down here. So yeah, we know them. We still interact with them to this day. They're great people. Yep. So this whole episode was all about bringing in another wife. So Andy and Nicole at this point in the season have never lived polygamy. They're talking about whether they want to live polygamy. The Browns are asking them a bunch of questions. Are you guys ever going to live that way? So they all go camping. Well, not camping, like a day picnic area up a canyon. I'm assuming somewhere down in Vegas.
And that's what a lot of us did when you go do we grew up in the woods anyhow. So, but yeah, a lot of times when you'd have family picnics and stuff like that, it would be out in the woods, over the park.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, you grew up on the mountain.
Yeah, we did.
So with Andy, he's talking to Cody, and they're talking about how he's never had another wife. He doesn't even how do you court another wife? It's interesting because growing up, I think all of us just assumed we would grow up and live polygamy, but there were so many of us that were like, are we really sure we want to do this? Are we not sure? And so, yeah. What?
Not me, but yeah.
Yeah, I always questioned. I mean, I actually never questioned. I just assumed I always would. But Andy's talking to Cody, and they're grilling burgers. They're talking, and Andy says he doesn't know how to start courting another wife. And he's 37 at the time. He's a couple years older than me. And he's like, some 37-year-old should not be looking at some 18-year-old. They shouldn't, but they do. And they always do.
Well, and us as kids growing up, you would see these guys doing it. And he says in there creepy. And I was like, yeah, you would look at these older men dating young girls, and you'd be like, man, that's a creeper.
Yeah.
Because they're, like we've talked about a little bit before, some of these men never get out of the dating mode. They're always in dating mode, looking for a new wife, looking at the young girls, the teenage girls to possibly being in their family. So they're always in this creepy dating mode and never get out of that dating mode to be husband mode. So,
well, and Andy even mentions that
Yeah.
in the episode. He was like, yeah, once you get married, then you're at church, and then there's all these single girls that could be potential wives, and you don't know where to look. So you're like looking at the ground because you don't want to be caught like creeping up on
being the
some
creeper.
girl. And so I hadn't really always thought about it from that perspective until this episode. I hadn't always thought that maybe this could be, yeah, some guys like Andy. You know, Andy was always a really good guy. I always really
Mhm.
loved being friends with him. But I can totally imagine that, yeah, he doesn't want to be creeping up on these young girls. He's got a wife sitting next to him, and she's wondering if, like I did, you know, are you looking at her as a potential wife? Are you not looking at her as a potential wife? And so, yeah, he said he ends up looking at the floor quite often, especially in like social events, dances, things like that. Dances were really one of the bigger events that we would get together where you would start to learn who these other people were. You'd start dancing with them. You'd have 3 minutes to figure out who this person was.
If the lightning bolt hits.
Yeah, if you
So-
liked them, if you were going to dance with them again, if you were going to, whatever it was. And so, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it from the man's perspective that he could be conceived as a, or perceived as a creeper. And a lot of them were.
Well, because some men don't care if they're perceived as a creeper. So
Yeah.
they're constantly in creeper mode.
Yeah, they really don't.
So, and that's where he talks about also, he's recognizing that closed societies tend to bring in the creepers and the scum of the earth, I think is what he called it. So,
yeah, Andy points a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
of, we thought maybe we would be able to do 2 episodes, but there's so much in this one episode that Andy talks about that we wanted to cover. Cody also says, would you ever marry a woman that already has children? And Andy's like, yeah, I don't know if I'd have it any other way.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really interesting because one of his perceptions was, if you're a newlywed, you deserve to be in newlywed mode. Like you deserve to have that newlywed time together, where he's already an established man with 6 kids and
Mhm.
has already been married for quite a while. So I thought that was interesting when he said that, because not a lot of people consider that. What they do is they just get the wife and then they go on 11-day honeymoons and they still live in the newlywed phase and basically abandon their families.
You leave the other 3 wives to be running
Mhm.
the household, running what you guys had created before. They're taking care of it while you're stepping out, getting remarried, having that honeymoon, enjoying that newlywed phase. Yeah.
And it's true. Like we didn't really get the newlywed phase because we got married and I had 3 kids. And so we didn't really get that phase. It was instantly like, I remember one time you said, hey, let's go to a movie. I'm like, it's Tuesday. It's a school night. I can't go to a movie on a school night. And you're like, oh crap. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Because you'd been single with no
Mhm.
kids. And here I was, you know, a mom.
Mhm.
And so I might have only been 25 or 20. I guess we got married when I was 27. I might have only been 27, but I had 3 little babies. And so
Mhm.
it's not something that we could just jump in the car and, hey, let's go to a movie on a Tuesday.
It was a learning experience. Our first year of marriage. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was a learning curve for both of us.
Yeah.
I needed to learn how to like chill a little bit, and everything didn't have to be so scheduled. And you needed to learn that some things had to be
Mhm.
scheduled.
Yep, that things were scheduled.
But one thing you're seeing a lot of the spiritual or the belief, the faith part
Yeah.
of the religion in this episode, where Andy's like, how do you take something so sacred and so holy and so special and enter that principle of plural marriage in an appropriate way?
Yeah.
Where your wife feels loved. I mean, there's going to be feelings. There's no way around it. It's going to be hard no matter what you do. Your wife is going to be sleeping alone. And for a man, like, I don't know, how would you feel if I'm in one room and you're in the next room with another woman, you know what I mean? And there's intimacy involved and stuff like that. Like knowing that I'm in the other room by myself, trying to figure that out. Like that would be so hard.
Thank goodness I've never had to imagine that. It really is. I saw the way that my parents grew up, and I was at one point in my life said I didn't think I was ever going to get married, but I wasn't going, if I did get married, I wasn't going to have multiple wives for multiple different reasons. I was kind of discussing this earlier. My dad had so many kids. We were sometimes lost in the shuffle. And so I wanted to be a dad that was involved with my kids, that they knew I was there. I knew their names. I could talk with them. I knew what they all were thinking. And so I had a different idea of what I felt like I didn't have as a kid that I wanted to incorporate if I ever became a dad. So that's why I made decision early on. I wasn't going to have multiple wives. I argued with my dad about it, and I never did look for multiple wives. So
yeah.
But
and I mean, I'm glad I didn't, but
yeah, I went against my teachings because I was taught that that's the only way I was going to make it into heaven. So I made a decision that, well, they always would use the line, well, that's something that we'll figure out in the afterlife. Well, if I just only get one wife in this life, then they'll figure that out in the afterlife, and maybe I still will get into heaven, but I don't know. I just didn't want to. I lived polygamy as a kid, and I saw it from a kid's perspective, and I didn't want to live it as an adult. It was something that we were told it was hard. I saw that it was hard, and I made a decision that I wasn't going to be a good polygamist. So I didn't even know if I was going to be a good husband or a dad, but I wanted to be a good husband and dad. So I made a different decision, and ultimately led to my excommunication, which was another great decision. So
well, and then they're talking about basically Andy comes back and says Cody's done this successfully 4 times. He's courted 4 different women and done it successfully 4 times. Now we know where the family is today versus where they were in this season. That's what's so interesting, to be able to go back and watch it from this perspective, knowing that the family dissolves, knowing that everyone kind of goes their own way, knowing that they no longer believe in this faith. We did watch this episode with my mom, who kind of chimed in a few little tidbits here and there too, about how they truly do believe what it is that they're representing.
Yeah,
they really do. And I can see that too, but so much of what they represent, we know that that's not what's happening in the background. And so, Andy asks, would you guys all do this again? And, Mary's like, probably not. I don't think I would do it if it wasn't a commandment and if I didn't know that I didn't have to do this to get back to heaven. I don't think I would do it. And you see Cody get kind of a concerned look on his face, like, what are you talking about? And then you see Janelle say, yeah, I think I would do it again because of the family, the unity, all of that stuff. And then Andy was like, yeah, I don't think I would do it. If I didn't believe this and didn't know that this was how I got back to heaven, I wouldn't do it either. And so I thought that was, I liked hearing their different perspectives of how they would do it again or not do it again. And then Cody chimes in, I would do it again, even if it wasn't a commandment, because I did it for love. And so here we are 16 seasons later, and where he's claiming he never loved these women ever. And that the only thing he's ever been guilty of with his children is not loving their mothers. And so I thought that was really funny. Again, this is why most polygamous people did not watch the show and have not watched the show, is because what they represented was not real. And they didn't mean to, I don't feel like they purposely went out there to mislead the public, but what they were saying and what they were doing was not, it wasn't real. When you live this way and you know all these hardships and you know how difficult this life is, then you would not do it unless you honestly believed it was the only way to get back to heaven.
Well, and the other thing that Andy points out here, that this is a belief system that we grew up with. He's kind of talking to the Browns as he is pointing out that originally the 3 original wives all lived together. That is a belief system. That is a teaching that we are taught, that you want to be able to create one unit, a family unit that all lives together in harmony. And the Browns were able to do that with the 3 original wives. And now you're seeing that they've separated into individual homes. And he's kind of calling them out on that this is a divorce look situation where you're only seeing him every 4 days, because ultimately, if you're marrying multiple wives and they can't get along, then you would put them in different houses until they could become in harmony to be able to move in together. Your ultimate goal is to move in. When Cody and the girls started this, they were going around to different families' homes that were living together to see how they lived together. Promise growing up in it, it wasn't peaceful, but our family would put on a good show when these guys would come in to see how a family lived together, because ultimately their teaching is those families need to live together. And it's almost kind of looked down on if families are living in separate homes, because, and that's what he calls it, he's living 4 different monogamous lives.
Yeah.
And for the kids, they only get to see their dad every 4 days. And is that truly fair? So he's kind of pointing that out to them. And I think Mary kind of agrees. Yeah, we used to have it.
Yeah.
And now we're not. So he's kind of calling it out. I was trying to look, it didn't have much of Robin in here to see if she was offended, because that is a judgment or a belief system. And they had said in here that they hadn't felt support from their community by going out and doing this. They didn't. They weren't going to be supported by the community, but Andy and Nicole came down there and were supporting them, but also pointing out the core beliefs that Cody had been living,
that he was no longer doing.
But he was no longer living the way. So he was already showing the separation, or pointing out the separation of the 4 wives now that Robin has come in.
Yeah.
And so these are teachings that he's blatantly pointing out, but then also asking Cody, well, how did you do it? Well, I don't think he's wanting to see how Cody courted a new wife without being creepy, but it was creepy to me.
Some of the stuff we watched him do.
Yeah, it seemed creepy. Yeah, and I don't know if they'd seen the first 2 episodes. I no clue.
Well, and I feel like too, when you go to church on Sunday and you meet your friends and everyone that you're with, it's easy to put on like this face. Oh, this is how our family is. Look how wonderful we are.
Sunday school face.
Yeah, your Sunday school face, exactly. But it's not always that way. And so I felt like I was watching the different wives and the way that they were reacting to some of the things that were said, and you could see some of the discomfort. My mom even pointed it out. Did you see Janelle's face when when Andy was like, yeah, look at this, or what, I guess Nicole had said something about, yeah, you get all these other moms, and Janelle's like, really? And so there is so much that goes on in the background that nobody sees. You know, they're all going to put on their happy faces. Robin's 9 months pregnant in this episode. Like, they're all going to put on their happy faces and make it look like everything's wonderful. But in the background, yeah, their family is slowly starting to fall apart during this stage you can see it during this stage of the filming. And then they talk about having Andy and Nicole come over for Sunday services. And they're going to do Sunday school. This is very common. This is how we all did Sunday school too. We just did it in somebody's home, where typically you're going to have, one of the mothers get up there and do the hymn songs. My mom.
Yep. What? Very typical. I put on here. Yep. Sunday services start out with the prayer, do the creepy hymn, and then go into some sort of lesson to guide the family. Yeah. We did this in our own home. We didn't go to other people's home.
But people came to your home.
People came to our home because there were so many of us.
Because my dad would overwhelm. Home too.
Yeah, we would overwhelm another family by all of us going. So,
and that's what my dad did too. We had it in our home until we got older, and then my ex-husband and I, we went to a different family Sunday school for a while. And sometimes you'll switch family Sunday schools. Like, hey, this one, maybe we don't like what these guys are teaching, so we're going to go to a different family Sunday school. And that's typically what would happen in the morning. On Sundays, you'd have these family Sunday schools like this. And then in about 3:00 in the afternoon, you'd have the big, huge gathering for all of the older youth and, parents. So a lot of people would bring their children to that too.
The sacrament meeting, where you go take the sacrament
meeting. the LDS church has, they call their sacrament meeting too. I believe they do like a 3-hour time block where you've got Sunday school and then you've got like Relief Society, girls class or whatever, and then sacrament meeting. Ours is very similar, but they sang the song. I told my mom, I'm going to bring this up in my video. Have I done any good in the world today? So they always use the same hymn books as the LDS church. And so we would get the same hymn books, use the same, I believe the FLDS do the same thing.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, I hated this song so bad. It was such a guilt trip of a song.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the words were, have I done any good in the world have I done any good in the world today? If not, I have failed indeed. Have I made someone feel glad? You know, it's just one of those guilt trip songs. Have I made someone sad? Have I made someone feel glad? If not, you know, and so it is one of the songs that you're just like, by the end of it, you're like, holy shit, I'm a failure. Like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so, yeah, my mom was just saying how bad she hated that song every time we'd sing it in church. Then Andy gets up and starts talking. You know, Christine gives a talk. All the mothers get up and give little talks. Andy gets up and just wings it, which is funny. He cracks me up when he does stuff like that. He talks about everyone living in secret and the Browns and how proud he was of the Browns for speaking out and publicly trying to make this a public thing. Now, in the AUB, I would say about 80% of the people were highly, highly against the Browns going public, and maybe 20% of the people were really supportive of it. And then again, I've said this before, most everyone we knew just stopped watching. Everyone watched the first season and then they stopped watching it after that because so much of it wasn't real or wasn't reality. It was real. They were trying to do what they were trying to put their best foot forward, but it wasn't reality of what we all really truly experienced growing up. And then Christine gets super emotional saying that McKelty was proud of her parents for going public. She finally understood, because now you've got a bunch of angry, frustrated teenagers who were ripped from their home in Utah and they were moved down to Nevada and they're angry. They don't understand why their parents did this to them. They don't understand why, you know, why they're made to suffer while their parents are on TV. And so maybe that was a good thing that Andy came down and talked to them. I don't know. But that's where Mary mentions, hey, we don't have a lot of support from our church group, from our friends. And so it was nice to hear Andy get up in front of our children and say, I'm so proud of you guys for doing this because this is what's happened. You know, this is what you guys are bringing forth. This is going to sound a little bit judgy on my end. One of the things I can definitely see with the teenagers is now the Browns, if you notice, they're all starting to wear fake nails. They're all starting to do little things that they did not do the first season, because now they're getting a little bit more money. And so as a child, in my perspective, if I watched my parents doing this and I was taken from my home and moved down to Nevada, or, you know, moved somewhere where I didn't know anybody, and then I'm watching my parents spend money on luxury items, which acrylic nails would be considered a luxury item. Especially in this society. Yeah. And who else knows what other luxury items they were buying? Now, that's not to say that they didn't deserve to do something like that. That's not to say anything like that. But as a child, watching my parents come into this money or watching them have more items for luxury items, I might be a little bit like, are you doing this for the money? Are you doing this for the fame? Are you doing this because you really do want to open up these societies? I don't know. But I've just watched the way that the Browns the way that they lived in season 1 financially versus the way that they are living now in season 3 with these really expensive rental properties. All of them are in their own home. Those are expenses you would not incur in a normal polygamous family because you just wouldn't be able to. Yeah. And so hopefully that didn't sound too judgy.
I didn't even notice.
I know
they're doing that.
No, but every one of the wives has. I don't think Janelle did, but I saw Christine. I saw Robin, definitely. And so I'm just curious, you know, just one of those things that it's like acrylic nails is something that is absolutely unnecessary in any way. And when you are living in a society where you buy essentials and that's about what you buy, that's it.
Yeah. within this society. Usually
Right.
it's because ultimately, again, I'm going to
I wore acrylic nails
harp-
for 20 years,
harp
so
on-
no judgment on me for
on
that.
this, but ultimately you're supposed to give everything
Right.
to the kingdom of God and only take back your essential needs, not accessories, not anything like that. So
Yeah.
for them to be, if you will, spending money on these vanity accessories,
Yeah.
it's frowned upon and looked down
Very
upon.
much so.
So not us judging. So
And again, I wore acrylic nails for 20 years. I only stopped wearing them about 5 years ago.
Spend your money any
However
way you want to.
spend it. I'm just saying, as a child, I would see that and kind of be like, what are we, you know?
Well, you were taught something from birth to a certain age,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you saw that teaching
Right.
morph or change a little bit.
Right.
So.
And so you just kind of wonder, are my parents really doing this are they doing this for the income? Are they doing this for the fame? Like, I would question that if I was a young kid. I had another mother who would go do acrylic nails. And she was, of course, my dad's favorite wife. She was the Robin in our family. And I remember growing up feeling angry with her because we could barely afford to put food on the table at our house. But she had this luxury item that felt so unnecessary. Maybe that's why it caught my attention, is because it brings up a childhood trauma of like, how can she afford to do that? And I babysat for her for free because she couldn't afford to pay a babysitter, but she could always afford to have her nails done. And that felt pretty unfair to me a lot growing up. So yeah, one of the things I just noticed in this episode is that in the past episodes, I know in some of the episodes before they had some of these luxury items, but I think it's the first time I'm mentioning it. But so then all the adults are sitting around and they're talking about Warren Jeffs and what's the difference between the AUB and the FLDS and how grotesque Warren Jeffs is. Now, I remember growing up, and the prophet at the time was Owen Allred, and he would meet with the FLDS prophet. And I remember my dad talking to us all the time and saying, you know, our council's been talking with their council, and we've been warning them that they better stop connecting, marrying these underage girls, because this is going to be the downfall of their community. Now, this was before Warren came around. There was not all the girls wore the same clothes. They all looked like regular polygamous people. They weren't this, because we did kind of all have a look.
We stood out. Yeah. We had long sleeves and in summer.
Yeah.
So you could definitely tell us polygamous kids. We grew up on a compound too, but we had the long sleeves, the shirts buttoned up to the neck, things like that. So you could definitely tell there was a difference.
Right. But they didn't look like they do now.
No.
Now they're like so uniform. And so I remember my dad talking to us one day at family Sunday school. Owen was there. Owen Allred was the prophet. And he was there, and they were talking, and Owen started crying, and he was just saying, I'm telling him this is going to be the downfall. And this is before Warren came into power, but he was trying to come into power. And they were talking about how concerned they were if he actually did come into power. What would it do to the FLDS? And this is when the FLDS the main part of the FLDS used to be in the Salt Lake Valley. And then they moved everyone down to the Colorado border. So the Utah-Colorado border, but they hadn't moved everyone yet. They were all still here. So the councils would get together all the time and they would compare, hey, what are you guys doing? What are we doing? Then they would actually have a fairly open relationship from what I recall. But you go ahead.
It's interesting to me that they're looking at Warren Jeffs just like we are. Warren Jeffs, and how critical they can be, because in their belief system, Warren Jeffs is not the prophet of the Lord. It's whoever was prophet of the AUB, and they don't understand how, I think he mentions a 35-year-old mother, how can she watch her 12 or 14 daughter be dated? Well, it's because of
he promised to a 60-year-old.
Yeah. It's because of the belief system that we were all incorporated with, that these are the mouthpieces of the Lord. Maybe not Warren Jeffs for the AUB people, but whoever was in charge of the AUB was the mouthpiece for the Lord. And that if they were doing anything against the Lord's teachings, that they would be removed by God.
Yep.
And so since Warren Jeffs was they look at him as the prophet, the seer, and the revelator of God. And so if the prophet, seer, and revelator tells you that your 12-year-old daughter should marry a 60-year-old man, you're assuming that's coming from God. That's how these people are believing. Same as the AUB. If, yes, their prophets are going, no, we'll get in trouble by the law. Let's have them be a bit older. But they absolutely believe that if the prophet, seer, and revelator tells them something, that he is giving them that advice from God, and that they should follow it.
Yep.
Even if they feel in their gut it might be wrong, they're using that as, well, the Lord would remove this person. Of course, the FLDS doesn't believe that the Lord would use the Texas Rangers to remove him and the government to remove him, because those are Gentiles. And so by that happening, he almost became a martyr to a majority. But a good portion of the FLDS, once that happened, it took some time, but a lot of them have left that group, especially the young kids, the younger people. And I think what Andy and what they were all kind of trying to get across is these closed societies actually bring in the scum, and that scum can rise to the top. And so if we had more open societies, if somebody said, hey, I feel like this is wrong, and I do have a choice to leave, and it's not a big scary world out there. It was interesting. A couple of us brothers left and got out into the big scary world, and it was okay. And once there was a choice to go outside of the AUB, there was a ton of my family that left and got away from the AUB. But it takes that reprogramming that the world isn't scary, and not everything that the prophet says is in your best interest. And I think people within the AUB have also gone through, AUB has lost a lot of the people within their group because they've just went through 3 prophets that all had different opinions. And so the Lord was changing his mind as they spoke through each different prophet. And some of those prophets, as Andy put it, were scum of the earth. Yeah. And they lost a lot of the people because they're like, there's no way that guy is talking to the Lord. So
right. Well, and Cody and Christine, Christine was in an advocacy group for a while. I think that's how they got this show, because she was in that Voices in Harmony or something like that. She was in it with one of my other mothers. And so they have very strong feelings about how evil of a man that Warren Jeffs is. And he is a very evil man. And that he preyed upon his community. But in the polygamy, a lot of people prey upon these types of communities because they are ignorant to a lot of the ways of the world. And I don't mean ignorant in a condescending, mean way to them. They just are ignorant to a lot of what they have. So much faith and belief and trust in other people that they just believe if you tell them that you have their best interest in heart, that you do.
Yeah.
And so they talk about this, and then you see Robin pipe in, and they're saying, Warren Jeffs should have been stopped by his own people. They should have said, hey, wait a second. But they didn't. They conformed and they conformed and they conformed until the group that they were a part of almost became unrecognizable. And so how does that reflect onto the Browns? I thought that was so interesting when Robin is the one piping in as angry as, I'm just so angry every time I read one of these. Yet her sister wives did not stop what was happening. Her sister wives did not stop the fact that Robin came into the family and didn't want to live in the same house. She came into the family with debt. There were so many red flags that they didn't stop because they believed in Cody in handling the things, handling the way that the family ran. They believed in the principle of plural marriage. So they allowed her to come into this family and restructure the family where it is almost unrecognizable. Well, it is. It's unrecognizable
it's
now.
a monogamy.
And so I thought it was hilarious that she is the one this upset and piping in and saying all these things when she's actively doing to the Brown family what she's so angry about Warren Jeffs doing to the polygamous community in Colorado City. And so when she was saying this, I'm like, how ironic that you would be the one saying all of these
so
things.
Frustrated.
Yeah. And then you're the one coming in and literally uprooting and changing the entire Brown dynamics of how they functioned as a family because it didn't work for you and you wanted it to work a certain way. And so that one, I was just watching that going, wow. But, you know, hindsight's 2020. Now I'm sure some of the wives wish they would have spoken up and said, no, we're not, this is not what we agreed upon as a family. No, this is not what we agreed. Just like the people in the community of the FLDS could have stood up and said, no, Warren, this is not what we want. This is not what we agreed upon, until the community becomes unrecognizable.
Yeah, you're changing fundamental teachings that your father might have taught. But it's so interesting because you can have a prophet that comes in and runs the group for 20 years or 30 years, whatever it is, who is teaching that we shouldn't have underage marriages, things like that. But then a new prophet can come in and he can,
just kidding. I like that 12-year-old over there.
He can base it off what previous prophets have done before the last prophet. So previous prophets married 14-year-olds, so it's okay for us to marry a 14-year-old again.
So I'm just following what.
So it just changes as each prophet comes in based on their teachings and their belief systems. It can change a community, and when somebody says, "Yeah, that's too big of a change," then you're welcome to leave. Most of the time. So, and they do. It seems like every time they get a new prophet, they lose a good portion of their community, and that community breaks off and another prophet is raised up. And so that's why there are hundreds of communities throughout Salt Lake, Montana, Canada that all have different leaders. So
because they all break away.
Within my lifetime, I can name like 4 or 5 different factions that have broke off from the AUB.
Right.
And have new prophets.
Well, the AUB was a faction. They broke off from
the FLDS.
So that was a huge split right there when that happened. So yes, at one point, for those of you that don't know, the FLDS and the AUB were one unit. And then a prophet came in and they didn't like it. They ended up splitting. I mean, there's a whole backstory to that. And they ended up splitting. The AUB went one way. And Christine's grandfather, Rulin Allred, led the AUB. And I believe Rulin Jeffs led the FLDS, which was weird, 2 Rulins. But I'm not sure on the FLDS. But one of the things Corey was saying a minute ago is that when they're not removed from, you know, now Warren Jeffs has to some degree become a martyr because of the way that he was removed from the leadership. We currently see Cody Brown and Robin Brown trying to make Robin a martyr on how she has left. On how this family has dissolved. It's not Robin's fault. It's not, she's shy. She's pretty. She's whatever it is. They're currently actively trying to make her
a good sister wife,
a martyr for her position in this. So it's crazy to me, the mirroring that you're seeing on a grand scale and on a family scale. So that's why we keep saying things that happen in the grand scheme of polygamy happen in individual families too. It's not just.
Did you just compare Warren Jeffs and Robin to each other?
Well, I mean, let me put it down. They were preyed upon communities. They were pretty evil. They took advantage of people. I mean, I feel like the description fits fairly well. So, and then also when Andy said, you know, this is what happens when you live in secret. This is what the Browns, I know, were trying to make it so that they didn't have to live in secret anymore, because there is a lot of predators that come into these societies when it's secret. There's so many, it's a breeding ground for predators. They come in because of ignorance. People don't understand. They want to have faith. They want to believe that everyone's a brother in Christ. Everyone's a brother in, in polygamy. Everyone's a brother in, and so everyone has everyone else's best interest at heart. And that's just not the case. And so these predators come in and they financially abuse, they sexually abuse, they, physically abuse. And then when they get caught, adios, they're out of there. They just pack up their bags and leave.
And go to the next group.
Yeah. And so so I understand why the Browns were wanting to do this. I think that they succeeded in showing what polygamy is actually like, because the way that their family has dissolved is showing what polygamy actually is like.
And I really, really like that Andy pointed out that this kind of closed society draws scum. There are a ton of people within each and every one of these groups that come in for the predatory reasons.
Right.
So, and he's pointing that out. We all grew up seeing, what do you call them, creepers and scum, and these guys who are just in there to try to get young wives, young girls. So.
And these men, I mean, oh hell, my ex-husband was taken for tens of thousands of dollars by one of these men. And then he packed up and went to Australia, I believe, and married like a 12-year-old little Asian girl from Australia.
Allegedly.
No, he did.
Okay.
And so that's the part that is so frustrating, is that they literally come in, they prey upon people who are, and my ex-husband wasn't willfully ignorant. He just was spinning out of control when I decided to leave. And so give away all the money to whoever we can so that Melanie doesn't get anything.
And we'll get it back later.
Exactly. We'll get it. We'll hide it. And okay, so this is another thing that they do. This is where you see the scum of the earth, is these men will cover each other's backs so that the women cannot have anything.
Yes,
so that's what happened in this particular case. He thought he was transferring tens of thousands of dollars into this guy's name so that I could have no access to it and our children couldn't during our divorce. And then the guy took off with over $100,000 from other people too, not just my ex-husband, but other people. And he came in and he was a great brother in Christ for 3 years before he took off with hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And people like us outsiders call him scum of the earth. That would be considered a righteous brother in the faith. So,
yeah. And so I just, one of the things I do find, Christine was always an advocate for trying to create healthy resources for women who might not want to leave polygamy, but they need help. They're being abused. Their children are being abused. And that was always a passion of Christine's. I'm curious if she's still involved in anything like that, because there's so many different options where she could help so many different women. But that was one of the reasons she felt so passionately and strongly about not talking about Warren Jeffs and the atrocities that happen in the FLDS, because she didn't want to push these women away from coming to get help if they need help. So that's where this is so tricky, where this can be such a fine line, because you're not trying to judge where these people are, but you're also trying to peel back that cover and put light where darkness has been, and expose some of the wrongdoings and the genuine hurt that these people have suffered. And yet when on doing that, sometimes you can push the very people away that you're trying to help and you're trying to serve. And so that's where Christine, I felt like, was really genuinely concerned about that, and rightfully so.
Well, and I think that's what, in this episode, that's what they're pointing out, is what they want. This is what we'd like to do, is open up. And even though they've gone through what they've gone through, so if you're looking for that silver lining, they have opened up these communities. They have opened up a lot of people within these communities that 10, 15 years ago didn't know what to do. Now there's a place to go. So they achieved a goal, this goal of exposing, opening up the community to the public. Everybody's looking and watching how these communities are working. And within the communities, it's okay now for a lot of these young wives that got married 8 days after 17 to go, wait a minute, this might not be for us. We don't actually believe this anymore. And here's resources outside of the community that we can live in the big scary world, and it's okay to live in the big scary world. And also giving permission to wives who have been with nutcase husbands and who are being put out to pasture, that it's okay to leave, and you're still a good person. You're not. So I think they've achieved some amazing goals of showing the polygamous community there's life after polygamy and you'll survive. So
Right.
giving permission to a lot of people within this belief system to wake up. So
Right.
that's what we're trying to do too.
Yeah.
Hey, it's okay out here. It's safe out here. We're still good people out here. So come on out.
Well, and then so they're all decide to go on this boat trip. They're going to go to dinner. They're all sitting around and they're talking about polygamy. And, Andy and Nicole are saying, we know that this is true. We know that this is what we're supposed to be doing. We have a testimony of this. We believe in that. And they're asking, I love some of the harder questions where they're asking, what is it about polygamy that you love? And Nicole says, there's a lot of happiness in it. And sometimes I've wondered if the happiness outweighs the heartache, if it's worth that. Some families, there is a lot more happiness. Some families, there's a lot more heartache. It depends on the family too.
Well, this is everything that we're told to believe. So they're parroting what we've been told as children, as young adults. This is what you got to look for. There is happiness. Even though you've seen the hard times within our family, this can ultimately be the most blessed thing. And so they're parroting a lot of our belief systems that we grew up with, that we were told by our parents on how to do it. So I liked hearing where they were at that time and everything. And we've talked to Andy, and I don't think he has got another wife, and very happy, and different belief systems, and watching the way the sister wives came apart, probably thankful that they never did get another wife. So,
right.
And a lot of people our age, that it's interesting, a lot of people our age that have been in polygamy are now like Cody, and they're down to one wife, or they're all divorced and moved out. And a lot of kids our age, a lot in my age group, I think there's only one or two in my 8th grade class that are still part of the AUB. Most of them have left the AUB. So the males, we were had Pines Academy up in Pinesdale, and there I think was 15 of us in my 8th grade graduating class, and I think there was 2 of the males that were still a part of it. I think one of them just left too. So 14 or 15 out of 16 males in my graduating class are no longer a part of the AUB.
Yeah.
So those are the numbers.
It is. A lot of people leave. Well, I like to, so Nicole's trying to mention all of the different things that she sees the benefits of polygamy, but she doesn't mention anything about sister wives. And then Robin pipes up and says, well, what about your sister wives? And Nicole gets a little hesitant because truthfully, again, we've said this in other videos, the relationship between the sister wives is supposed to be an extremely spiritual relationship. The whole process is supposed to be extremely spiritual. It's a holy principle. It's a spiritual principle. And so, but it's very seldom ever truly that way. Some sister wives, for moments in time, yes, they might have that spiritual connection. They might have, and just like any other process, you might be stronger in your faith at that moment and then wane in your faith later on. And that's very common. And that's very common in sister wives relationships. But you see Nicole's hesitation of, I don't know if I'm going to be friends with my sister wife. I don't know. Like, obviously, it's everybody's wish and hope that they are, but that's not always realistic for them to do that.
Well, we grew up in a society where, yes, ultimately that's what you were supposed to have, but naturally that's not how it was. The sister wives didn't get along. They weren't always friends. Sometimes they were friends, but the majority of times they're not friends. They're coexisting with each other, especially if they're living in the same house. If they're in separate houses, they probably don't.
Then he lives monogamy.
Yeah, he lives
monogamy with 4 different women. And that's basically what Cody took from. He took his family from Utah living in a polygamous situation to Vegas living in a monogamous situation. And he just has 4 monogamous relationships. And it is, like Andy said, it's like a divorce where you only get to see your dad every 4 days. And one of the things the wives are trying to point out, we just really don't think that Nicole sees the benefits of living this way, and she won't see those until she lives them. And that's the trick right there. When they said this, it was like, that's how they hook you, is you won't see the true benefits of this until you live this way. And then it's like, then you get a sister wife and your whole life is upside down now. And now you're trying to figure out, like, how do you make your family work anymore? What do you do? And now it's like, well, you'll understand once she has children, then you'll understand how you can love her children and she can love your children and you can all be this kumbaya family. And then she has children. And now what do? You're still not getting along. You're still not meshing. You're still not doing it. And now you're stuck because now this man has children with her and he has children with you. And now he doesn't want to abandon either one of you. So you're in a relationship. There's nothing you can do about this. Now you're forever tied to these people forever. And so that is one of the ways that I felt tricked, I would say, into living polygamy, is because, well, you'll understand once you live it. Well, you'll understand once she has children and you can help each other. And so it's always like that. You got to get to the next step and then you'll understand how beautiful it is. And then you'll understand why when you get to love another woman's child as your own, you will see the benefits and the love. And I agree that loving another woman's child as your own is a wonderful experience. I feel like I have had that experience with other people's children, but that doesn't mean I have to let them sleep with my husband to get there. And that's the trick, I feel like, in this religion.
Well, and I think they're asking her questions about polygamy, about trying to get her to respond, and she's trying to respond in what we were trained, what we were told.
Because she knows polygamy, she's being filmed.
Yeah, so she's being told or asked the questions. She's telling what she's been told as a kid, what to look for. And they're questioning, well, I don't think she does. But she does say one line in here that I thought was the truth that kind of came out with her. And she says, it's going to be morally hard for my kids not to have Andy around. That is ultimately what she's feeling, I feel like, and I could be wrong, but they're raising 6 kids together. As a mom and a dad, raising them together. If he gets another wife, yes, if they live together, but still growing up in the way we did, all of us grew up in the same house. And then a lot of times there was a central gathering area, but I grew up in a section of the home that my mother ran, you know what I mean? And it wasn't always comfortable to go through the house. So we as kids lived outside a lot, did a lot of work, and we saw Dad, even though he lived in the same house with us, very rarely, once or twice. Usually when you were seeing Dad, it was like we were doing family home evening or we were getting in trouble or stuff like that. Or mom's night. Yeah. And so I understand that what she said right there when she used morally, it would morally be hard, or I can't remember the complete phrasing, but that was coming. She was scared, or she was saying, is it morally okay for him to have another wife and other kids? And now she's going to be that single mom raising their 6 children part-time.
Yeah.
Because living in polygamy, I can't imagine. I can't imagine it. I feel like it's like growing up in a divorced house where you get to see a dad. Yeah, a bunch of single moms. You get to see a dad every once in a while. Sometimes he gets to be Disneyland dad. Sometimes he gets to be disciplined dad. So yeah, it is like, I feel like growing up in a divorced thing. And does she morally want to do that to her kids? She's worried about her kids. Yes, this is what we've been told that the Lord is wanting us to do. This is the only way we get to heaven. But morally, do I put my kids through this? And she doesn't want to. And they haven't. So thank goodness. And love them. They're amazing human beings. So it was good to see them on here and to see how we were raised, what we were taught, them saying it, but also hesitant too.
Right.
So,
well, and then I thought it was a little ironic the way that the show ended. Mary tells them, you need to make sure that you get someone who wants the whole family and not just the man that want. And this is like literally one of the last things that's said on the episode. And I thought, and
doesn't just say it, lives it that way. So
and I'm thinking, wow, how sad that is how we're going to end this whole episode, is somebody who doesn't. You got to find somebody who wants the whole family, because when you see when someone comes into a polygamous family who really just wants the man, they don't want the entire family. You see what's happening to the Browns.
They hire a nanny. They don't let the rest of the family get. They don't live with the other wives. They don't blend into the family list.
They try to recreate the family culture.
What not to do. Yeah. And what would they say here? That write the book on polygamy for dummies. Yeah. So Robin's marking down everything that you don't do. So if you want a cohesive polygamous family. But
now, if you were to go ask Cody on the knife and the kidneys scene, when he was like, that's the problem with you. You didn't try to have a real relationship with these other people. You just wanted to have a relationship with me. And he's yelling this at Christine. And I was thinking, oh, that's hilarious. You're yelling this at the one person, Christine, who has been there as a mother to all of these children, who has been there as a support system for Janelle while Janelle works, who's been there as a support system to Mary and helped Mary raise her child, who even said to Robin, when Robin found a babysitter, a nanny, I can't, we're here. Why wouldn't you let us help you take care of your children? So Cody's yelling at her, saying, and he's telling Robin, she's, you're the dirt on her shoes. She's treated you like crap from day one. And yet we see who came into the family and tried to change the whole family dynamics to what she wanted it done. This is what will happen. The family will dissolve.
But you're seeing this pattern over and over again. Mary saying that the communication with Robin was not reciprocate. And then what does Robin say? Yeah, it wasn't reciprocal. I felt like I was doing more. And so she does the very minimum.
Right.
And when Mary's like, okay, I'm done, you know what I mean? Well, I was trying. I was doing my very best. And she wasn't. And she told me she couldn't be friends with her ex's husband, And it's just like, oh, you say, hey, you're doing this. No, you're the one not doing that. So you don't have a relationship with me. Well, I was trying to take. So
they're calling out the very things that Robin has been so guilty of. And so I am sure that a lot of AUB members, a lot of polygamous people have seen what's been happening in this show. And it scared them. It scared them to want to live polygamy. It scared them to want to be a part of the community, because once you get so far, that woman is forever a part of your family now. There's nothing you can do about it. You will always have children with that woman. You will always have. And so she's now integrated herself into the family unit, and there's nothing you can do to get rid of that. As Robin so clearly stated on one of the last tell-alls, she said, well, sorry, Christine, they're going to be a part of your life forever. There's nothing you can do about that. Robin clearly stated that. So I am sure that a lot of younger generations wanting to come into or that believe in polygamy are watching this going, I don't want that to happen to my family. I don't want to work so hard for 17 years and then bring somebody in who just helps dissolve the whole thing. So I don't know. Go ahead.
No, it's just, I hope more AUB, FLDS, I hope more of them watch this show, because they're living it. They're living exactly what the Browns have been living. And so they can hopefully see some of those red flags, see some of those things going on with their family, and make decisions a lot sooner in life than after.
Like Robin said in this episode, why didn't the people of the community stop him? Well, why didn't the wives stop her before their family dissolved to this point? it's a tragic thing to watch. We watch these shows not with having glee to watch some of it's hard. It's heartbreaking because you're heartbroken for the children. You're heartbroken for these women. I mean, yes, they are going on to live different lives, but this is one of the reasons why no one in the community wanted to support them going out public, was because they were warned over and over and over, if you do this, your family will dissolve. There's no way you can keep your family together, exposing a sacred, holy union to the world. Here they are. So let us know what you guys think in the comments. This was an interesting episode.
I did want to mention one thing. They did put the post on here, the little thing that popped up that says Warren Jeffs, 2011, got a lifetime sentence plus 20 years. That 20 years is probably for the FLDS people, so that when he does pass away and the Lord brings him back, resurrects him, he's still got 20 years in prison. So
he's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere for another 20 years. So when the Lord gets in there and brings that clown back, he still has to spend 20 more years in prison.
Pay his penance. There's no way around it.
Sorry, FLDS people. So, but based on your belief system,
there you go.
There you go.
So let us know what you guys think in the comments of this episode. We're going to try to get through the rest of season 3. We keep saying that, and life keeps lifing for us. So we are trying to get them done as quick as we can. But let us know what you guys think in the comments.
Yeah, I really actually enjoyed this episode, other than the family home evening brought me some trauma from growing up in it. But other than that, enjoyed it, enjoyed listening to kind of what their goals were. And I think they've achieved most of those goals now. Can still do more, but loved seeing Andy and Nicole on that too. So, all right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.